Alright, let's dive into something that's been making headlines recently, but from a perspective you might not have heard yet. So, here's the deal. Hamas agrees to a disarmament plan, and almost immediately, we see overnight strikes in Gaza that result in at least 8 deaths. Sounds like a contradiction, right? But what makes this really interesting is the timing and the context. Personally, I think this situation is a perfect example of how complex and fragile peace negotiations can be, especially in a region as volatile as the Middle East. First off, let's break down what's happening here. Hamas, the Palestinian group, has agreed to hand over its weapons to a US-led board of peace. On the surface, this sounds like a huge step forward. I mean, disarmament is often seen as a cornerstone of peace, right? But here's the catch: Israel isn't exactly jumping for joy. In fact, Israeli officials, like National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, are calling the deal not acceptable. This raises a deeper question: if one side isn't fully on board, can any agreement truly hold? What many people don't realize is that this isn't just about weapons. It's about trust, control, and decades of conflict. Israel has been skeptical of Hamas' intentions for years, and this deal doesn't seem to have changed that. From my perspective, this skepticism isn't just political posturing, it's rooted in a history of broken agreements and ongoing tensions. So, when we hear about these strikes happening right after the disarmament deal, it's not just a coincidence. It's a reflection of the deep-seated mistrust on both sides. Now, let's talk about the human cost. Among the 8 killed were a father, mother, and their 9-year-old son. This isn't just a statistic, it's a family torn apart. What this really suggests is that even when progress seems possible, the reality on the ground is often far more brutal. It's easy to get caught up in the political maneuvering, but we can't forget the lives being affected. Personally, I think this is where the international community needs to step in, not just as mediators, but as advocates for the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. Another detail I find fascinating is the role of the US in all this. President Trump described the agreement as a big step for the Middle East, but the reality is far more nuanced. The 20-point plan includes not just disarmament, but also the withdrawal of Israeli troops and the reconstruction of Gaza. But here's the thing: none of this has actually been implemented yet. The roadmap is there, but the steps are conditional, and both sides are waiting for the other to make the first move. If you take a step back and think about it, this is a classic example of how peace deals can get stuck in a cycle of you first. What's also striking is the logistical challenge of disarmament. How exactly do you collect and store heavy weapons, military sites, and tunnels? The plan mentions a Palestinian National Committee overseeing this, but they are still operating from Cairo, not Gaza. This isn't just a technical issue, it's a symbol of how disconnected the decision-makers are from the reality on the ground. In my opinion, this is where many peace agreements fall apart. They look good on paper, but fail to account for the practical and emotional complexities. Finally, let's talk about the bigger picture. Since the supposed ceasefire last October, over 1,100 Palestinians have been killed. That's not a ceasefire, that's a conflict that's still very much alive. And with 60 million tons of debris generated since October 2023, Gaza's reconstruction is going to be a monumental task. This raises a deeper question: can there ever be true peace without addressing the root causes of the conflict? Personally, I think the answer is no. Until both sides are willing to confront the underlying issues, we are just going to keep seeing cycles of violence and temporary agreements. So, where does this leave us? Well, I don't have all the answers, but I do think this situation forces us to rethink what peace really means. Is it just the absence of war, or is it something deeper, something that involves justice, trust, and reconciliation? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, in a world where headlines often oversimplify complex issues, it's up to us to dig deeper and ask the tough questions. Thanks for watching.